that thing is getting sadder every night. Holy smokes. Yes, indeed. Yes. Oh, of course. I'm sorry. I didn't know the microphone was open. Good evening, radio friends. Once again, it's time for the Hot Diggity Dog program. Yes, once again, it's time for that fascinating program that hits you right smack in the face with a mental pig bladder. Bring it on there. Well, that's an old vaudeville term. Nothing personal, of course. We cannot get personal in this day and age of alienation. And by the way, how are you working on your alienation? Is it growing well? Is it doing pretty good? Or do you keep finding yourself involved with other people? It's kind of out of date and all that, but you know. I just thought maybe we ought to toss in a little warning here. It's liable to be one of them nights. I'm feeling, as we say, my oats. Resident Chinese people. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. La cha 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 cha. Good night, Irene. Gee, that's a scary way to open it. Shouldn't you open up a can of sardines like that? That's liable to jump up and grab you by the earlobes. Good night. Yeah, that old clinker's coming back, you know. It's a terrible thought. Next week, red sails in the sunset. Oh, that if you think that's bad, how about this one? Throw me the thing in there. When the swallows return to Capistrano. What a bad song. Boy, are we lucky. They don't write stuff like that anymore. Well, I hear this, you know, I hear some guy playing this thing the other day, this Goodnight Irene. And I'm immediately hit by a fantastic, poignant memory of one of the wildest scenes that I think I ever saw. I rarely tell stories about things that happen in radio, and it relates directly to Goodnight Irene. Would you like to hear a little story about radio here tonight? Would you please give us a little mood music to get us started here, man? Well, together, gang, let's go. That's a good starter, Rooney. Yeah, the sadness of that song. Of course, the sadness of that song, Goodnight Irene, means a different kind of sadness to me than it does to the people who sit out there and, oh, yeah, poor Irene. Oh, poor guy, he got married, and now look at he's saying goodbye to the chick he really loves. All that folk music jazz. I remember when that was called hillbilly music, you know. And, you know, the folk were just guys that walked around and rode into Sears Roebuck all the time. And they had those little houses back at their house with the moons cut in the side, and you had to get through their country real fast. Real fast, else they'd steal the back tires right off your car. That's another story. However, I'm sitting in this radio station one time, and I'm just a mere stripling. And I was just beginning to taste the real acrid, bitter aroma the bitter flavor of human degradation, human aspiration, all the rest of it, the whole shlemoo, the bittersweet quality of life. And one thing I must point out before we go any further in this, and that is that the oldest showbiz gimmick in the world is the amateur hour. Now, this is a way to get cheap talent. And not only that, it's a way, there's a certain amount of direct involvement that people have when they're watching a bad amateur show. You don't want good amateurs on your show. Really, do you know that most really serious amateur shows weed out the really good guys? Oh, sure, nobody can identify. Now, how would you feel if they're saying, no, here it's tonight's big Wednesday night amateur show. Yes, the wheel of fortune goes round and round and round and round, and nobody knows where it will stop. Round and round it goes. And then he says, now, let's see, we got a young Italian boy here. What did you say your name was? Caruso. Enrico Caruso. And you're going to sing, what's that song? Vesti la Giuva? Vesti la Giuva now, sung by a young Italian singer who is just up from the ranks. And will he make it? Will he go all the way? Yes. The music goes round and round. The wheel of fortune spins. Who knows which way will it go? And then there's a brief pause, and then... Listen, all those guys are sitting out there waiting their turn with their $4 accordions who are going to play the happy birthday song and tap dance at the same time. Forget it. And nobody gets madder than the audience themselves. Oh, they hate to see somebody really good come up on. They like all those little girls, little 10-year-old girls who all stand together and they sing, roll out the barrel, ya-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha, ra-cha-cha-cha, cha-cha-cha-cha, ra-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha, roll out the barrel. And he says, yes, sirree, that was the little matzo ball sisters from Queens. What a wonderful little group of girls they are. Roll out the barrel. Call this number. Yes, sirree. Plaza 6SJ9 GT7LM. Come on. This is a part of the shtick, And I'm living way out there in the boondocks. And these shows used to travel around. And maybe Chris, you know that. They always say, now, tonight, we're coming to you from the auditorium, the massive International Victory Auditorium in Rabbit Hash, Kentucky. Well... this is the kind of and I'm sitting there watching these auditions. If you want to see I think it would make a wonderful movie. Seriously. I'm talking about a 20-minute short in black and white, or maybe color, but I think black and white would be better. A wonderful movie of these people auditioning for these amateur shows. I'm talking about, the big amateur shows that go on and on and on. Make a wonderful movie, because you see stuff. You wouldn't believe the kind of stuff you see when you're sitting in an audience or you're up in the control room watching these guys audition. And I remember one night I'm sitting there, and it's one of these big amateur shows, and they've announced a couple of months beforehand that they're going to come to this city, which was Cincinnati. And by George, they were holding the auditions in the radio station where I'm working, and I'm just a kid, and I'm doing a show, and I'd never seen this. I began to realize, that was the time I began to really understand that underneath the soft underbelly of America, under that placid, bland, that look that you see when you walk around the streets, those ordinary people buying newspapers and riding up and down on elevators, underneath that placid exterior, there lies the beating, palpitating heart of a fantastic showbiz vaudeville act. Everybody wants to get in showbiz. Everybody. And practically everybody thinks that he's got a talent. He really knows how to do this thing if they'd only come and ask him, and if he didn't get all hung up with that job at the insurance office when he was too young to know better, he could have gone on, he could have become a big deal in Broadway and all. And so, and this is what they live on, They go all around the country, and they announce beforehand that they're going to have these auditions. And these people come in. Well, I'm sitting there one evening, and there's long lines of them. You have no idea how many mothers are living vicarious lives in showbiz through their kid. Now, we all know about the stage mother. That's the 1 in 87 trillion that gets the kid up there, and the kid finally gets in The Music Man or something like that. That's 1 in 87 trillion. That's like an astronomical figure. But other than that, other than those few exceptions, there must be 800 million mothers who at one point took 3 tap dancing lessons and figured one day they would go back and take some ballet. Furthermore, not only ballet, they also take something called toe dancing. And acrobatic dancing, that's another thing they take constantly. And so here they are now, they're sort of fat and they've given up, and yet deep down inside that little black heart that's spinning, they want to make it, see. So they wind up with this poor little girl named Colleen or Arlene or Myrtle or Marcia or something. This poor little girl is spending every Saturday tap dancing. And this old lady is dragging her around to beauty parlors and getting her hair fixed all the time in the, you must get it fixed in the Jackie Kennedy size. She got all, the whole bit. And these chicks, these poor little girls are it's almost always girls. There's a few boy types, mostly women. There's I've never heard of a stage father. That's a non-existent creature. And so showbiz is about women. Let's face it, it's based on women. So long lines of them are waiting at the radio station there, and I'd see them. And there's always some little girl. Right, one of the great sights is a little girl about 9 years old, and she's got adenoids so prominent that they hang down to her knees, that kind. And she's got braces on her teeth, and she's wearing a dress that her mother thinks is sexy. Well, now, it is impossible for dresses to be sexy, Mother. It's what's in the dresses that is sexy. And so she's got, can you imagine this little 9-year-old girl with a low-cut gown? Ain't nothing to be low-cut about, but there she is, you see, and she's standing next to the piano, and her uncle or her music teacher is playing the piano, and she's looking out sultrily, with that sultry, she's seen a lot of Peggy Lee film shorts, and they took her down to the Palmer House to see Lena Horne, and so she's seen them all, and so she's got all the gestures, and she sings something like, my man, he'll never know, la cha cha, yeah, cha cha cha. You have no idea how many 9-year-old girls are singing things like body and soul. Yeah, cha-cha. Yeah, and they sing things like love for sale, young tender love for sale. Boy, you ain't just a woofing. You've ever heard a 7-year-old chick sing that one? You've heard a lot. And so we're watching hour after hour. We can't believe it, and we're even recording some of these surreptitiously to play back for our own kicks later on. I'll tell you some of the sneaky things guys on radio. And then all of a sudden, this old duffer comes out of the crowd. He's been waiting. He's been working up the line. And now he is ready to go. And he's one of those ancients. You remember when they used to have these cartoons in Esquire of the hillbillies? Those long, skinny hillbillies. Real long, like sticks. You remember those guys? The old hillbillies? He looked exactly like that. And he must have been 6'9", and he was he must have a waist of about 6 inches across. And he had this long black suit hanging down, and he had a long face that looked a little like, Chrissy Kilbride. You remember Ma and Pa Kettle? He had that kind of look. And remember, this is Kentucky, where they all come out of the hills. They come out of the Tennessee boondocks, there he was, and he had his best Montgomery Ward suit on, and he had a big black, like a steamer trunk, a big thing, showbiz steamer trunk there, and he's dragging it up to the stage, and he opens this thing up, and he starts to set up his equipment, and he has a rack. And he's setting the whole thing up with the little turn screws and everything, and he keeps saying, well, I'll be ready in just a minute. Now, don't bother me. Don't hurry me along there. And sitting down in front, there's an old lady there with her daughter who wants to sing Body and Soul. Would you please hurry up? We've got another audition, I'll be right along there. And he's setting this thing up, and it's a rack. And hooked onto the rack is about an 8-cup percolator. It's a coffee pot, see? And he's got it hooked on this thing. And he's got a window shade, which he hangs on a hook, also on the rack. He's got the window shade there. And he starts strapping on each one of his knees. He straps on a cymbal, a little cymbal he's made out of the bottoms of Prince Albert cans, And he's got these little cymbals, and he straps them on. Now, around his neck is one of these little, these little wire things, and he's got a little mouth organ that sits up there. And he looks around. He says, all right, you all ready to go? And the guys in the control room nod. Yeah, okay, all ready to go. And then somebody says, what are you going to do? What's the number you're going to do? Well, I thought I'd do Goodnight Irene. Well, now, this was before Goodnight Irene was popular. I think it was just a, it was a real hillbilly, you-know-what kicker. Anyway, he hollers, Goodnight Irene. All right, let's go all together. A 1, a 2, a 3. Goodnight Irene, goodnight, goodnight Irene. Like the ice away where you were, I want you in my dreams. And then he pauses 1, 2, 3, 4, and he starts to blow over the top of the coffee pot. And it goes... Well, the way he worked that, he would move the top, the little glass thing up and down. As he moves the glass thing up and down, the lid, he moves the lid up, and he's blown over the spout. Cha-cha. And all the while, his knees are knocking in, they're going... Choo, 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 choo. I'll tell you, I couldn't believe it. He looked like a toad giving birth to a Ford. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. And then he would pause, and he would reach up with his left hand while he's singing and tear... Now, get this. You won't believe this one. He would tear strips off of the window shade. He would tear it, and as he teared it, you know what it sounded like? It sounded like wire brushes, Good night, Irene. Good night. Greatest showbiz act, I'll tell you, I saw. Greatest showbiz act since Lawrence Welk. Speaking of cornball, this is WOR AM with FM New York. Hit that button there.
Readers of the New York Times expect the whole story about everything, including food. So the Times prints lots of recipes, and they're great. But that's only part of the story. Here's Craig Claiborne, food news editor of the Times, to tell you more.
About half of our columns are interview columns, explaining how other people live in New York and in the various states of the Union, and how people entertain. We like, as much as possible, to consider meals as a whole, and take up all aspects, from planning of menus to the preparation of the food. I think people are absolutely fascinated, not only with what people cook, but how they go about it, where they shop, what there is about the individual kitchen, how these kitchens are laid out, what pots and pans they use, and the whole background of how other people cook. I mean, people fascinate people.
You'll be fascinated, too, by some mighty helpful ideas on entertaining. The New York Times. If you're without it, you're not with it. For home delivery, call Murray Hill 70700.
Well, what we were trying to figure out, we was sitting in the control room watching this guy with his coffee pot and his knee cymbals and the whole bit. Oh, he would be a smash at the bitter end. I'll tell you, he would go all the way down there. And what we were trying to figure out is what subterranean urge drove him to experiment with tearing dime store roller shades. Now, that's what... he was very early pop art. I realized that, this guy was right with John Cage, the whole bit. Now, speaking of... We got commercials here. Let's see. Is your goal... Oh, yeah, let's see. Here's a note for the Collegiate Institute. It says, is your goal a position in business or a baccalaureate degree? Or if you're interested in business administration, accounting, or a liberal arts secretarial program, well, Collegiate Institute offers a special 1- and 2-year program that can start you towards that goal. And Collegiate is now accepting enrollments for both day and evening sessions. Interviews for the spring and fall semesters can be scheduled with the admissions dean by calling Plaza 8-1872. That's Plaza 8-1872, Monday through Saturday. And if you don't have your high school diploma, Collegiate offers a special 10-week course that enables you to obtain a New York high school equivalency diploma. So they've been registered, by the way, for more than 40 years by the New York State Department of Education. That's Plaza 8-1872. And if you'd like to write for the 1966 catalog, write to Collegiate Institute, 501 Madison Avenue in New York. Hit the button there, Bob. There you go.
Like the taste of real draft beer? Now you can take it home with you. Piels did it. Put real draft beer in 12-ounce cans. Try it yourself. You'll agree. It's really draft beer in a can. And it needs no refrigeration until you're ready to drink it. The only thing we didn't put in the can is the atmosphere of your favorite tavern.
Get up off the floor, Charlie. Terrible outfit. What do we have here? Times, Piels, School, Rover 2000, a magnificent English automobile, which I'm delighted to report I'm seeing more and more around on the streets every day. And if you're looking for a car that is built to be around for a while and is not built to be traded in every year, and in fact that you'd like to hang on to for a long time, you know there are some Rovers going and still being driven every day in England that go back to the late 20s and early 30s. Yeah, this is a car that is generally classified in England with such automobiles as the Rolls and the Bentley and so on. It's a magnificent machine. And it's compact, beautifully designed. You get 30, 31, 32 miles to the gallon, and one of the safest automobiles in the world. And a beautiful car. It's Rover 2000. And if you'd like to get pictures and so on, we'll send them along to you. Just send your name and address to Snob. That's 1440 Broadway, New York, and we'll send them along to you. Would you hit that little thing in there? Come on, let's hit it there. Let's get... That's it. We'll set the mood here for the next little problem that we're going to deal with here on the Whoopi Show. Yeah, that's very good. Excellent. I was thinking about this guy, blowing his little whistle. My father, the only thing my father ever played, somebody wrote me a letter the other day and said, what did your father, was your father a musician or what? And of course the implication was very snotty, actually. Was that he couldn't have possibly have been a musician, have somebody turn out who sings so off-key as you do. Well, that's creative singing, so it gives a little extra pizzazz there. But what he played, the only thing he actually played was this instrument. Would you please give me a little... He played the nose flute. That's how I started with this thing. And my first nose flute was strapped down to my proboscis by my old man when I was only about 8 months, maybe 9 months old. He says, blow, man. And I'll just tell you the truth. It's funny how you get hung up on things. Nobody can quite explain how we become what we are, It's not entirely explainable by such things as heredity or even environment. I don't think environment plays as much a part. I think there is something else. I can't put my finger on it. Like I'm this kid, It's funny. I'm living in the middle of a block of people whose biggest the idea of the greatest thing they could do was to go see the Midwestern Hayride. Or maybe they would go to see, once in a while, they'd take a long trip to Nashville to see the Grand Ole Opry. You know that I knew people, now you laugh, we here in the Faith East, I remember people when I was a kid who would take their entire week's vacation and go down to Nashville and wait in line to see the Grand Ole Opry. That would be the vacation. And they would come back with wondrous tales and autographed books by Minnie Pearl and, Roy Acuff and Ernest Tubb. And they talked for weeks, years on end, about the time that they sat there in the fourth row and Minnie Pearl walked right by them. Minnie Pearl, you'd be surprised. She's really a spry lady. She's not as old as she sounds. And she walked right by me, She was so close that if I'd wanted to, I could have reached right out and almost touched her. And she walked right on by. She went up to that microphone. You'd be surprised. That microphone that they use there is just like the microphones you see in the movies. They had the microphone there, and the announcer on that, the announcer's a big, tall man. I kind of had an idea he was a short, fat man. He got fat voice. That voice sounds awful fat. And instead, he's a big, tall man. He come out there, and he says, and now here she is. Here's the favorite, that old-time favorite that all you've been waiting for and loving and just hoping she'd show up. Here she is. It's Minnie Pearl herself. And Minnie Pearl stood right up there at that microphone. You'd be surprised how friendly she is. She's a very friendly person, just like anybody else, I mean, anybody else makes $100,000 a year. She's just very nice, and she waved to all the people. And I remember the night we were there, she sang Old Hound Dog. And she carries that guitar along there, and, by George, she's just like anybody else. Well, that was a typical theatrical criticism of my time. I heard these people all around. And another thing they would always do, they would take a trip into Chicago, and I will award you a brass figurine. You think you know about trivia. I will award you the brass figurine if you can tell me the name of this show. Everybody would go in on a Saturday night to see this show, which was broadcast on a big Chicago radio station that was known as the Prairie Farmer Station. It was a pure farmer station, that's all, right in the heart of Chicago. And on the show, one of the stars of the show was Gene Autry. Gene Autry and Lulabelle and Scotty, that was another one. They also had the Arkansas Woodchopper. And another group, there was a group on there called the Hoosier Hotshots. Do you remember them? The Hoosier Hotshots? And they said, let's hear a toot on a tooter, Hezzy. That's what they'd say. Let's have a toot on a tooter, Tommy. And he'd go, woo, whoop, one of those little whistles. Now what was the name of that show? To give you a further clue, one of the guys on the show, he was a hillbilly singer. And once in a while, he was an MC, was George Goebel. Yeah, George Goebel is an ex-hillbilly singer, yeah. They'd say, and now here he comes, bringing his great big guitar up here on the stage. It's little Georgie Goebel. And there'd be a burst of applause, and you'd hear them popping their gum and yelling and hollering, and somebody'd throw a lot of corn up on the stage. And then he'd sing, silver threads among the gold, darling, I am growing old, silver threads among the gold. That was always a big deal on that show, that kind of stuff. Now, what was the name of that show? Well, yeah, that's right. Now, how did you know that? You're right, by George. I'm amazed. That was the name of that show. That was a fantastic. And that show was more popular in the Midwest than the Grand Ole Opry. And in fact, some people said the Grand Ole Opry was kind of a takeoff on that show. And it was right in the middle of Chicago, and people used to line up for blocks to get in to see that thing. Boy, oh boy, you could smell it for miles. They'd line up there with their sandwiches and their pork chops. Oh yeah, when a hillbilly goes to anything, he does not buy hot dogs. He brings with him last week's pork chops. The whole scene. You have no idea. They really lay it out, man. And they'll sit right out there. One of the great things about going to one of these shows, they'll sit right out in the middle of the show. You know how when you go to a Broadway show, people will discreetly eat a little chocolate? Or they'll sit there and they'll eat a little popcorn that they brought in, and during the intermission they rush across the street and they'll have themselves a couple of double bourbons so they can face the second act. This whole scene. Well, in a hillbilly show, the people sit right there, and the guys up there singing silver threads among the gold, darling, I am growing old, silver threads among the gold. And you look down there in the crowd and hear these big fat old mamas, and they're wearing their best print dress that they got the pattern from Sears Roebuck, and they made it themselves out of flour sacks, and they sit there in their print dress, and all the kids are sitting in there in their fresh, clean overalls, all polished up, wearing their new tennis shoes because they got them for the trip to Chicago. And there's Dad sitting there, old. He's got a red neck that's 4.5 feet long. You have no idea how the word redneck really means something if you've lived in a place where they have red necks. I'm telling you, they're beet red. and his neck is sticking out there, and he's got a haircut that has left one little tuft up around the back there, and his head, very angry-looking head, say, and those kind of watery blue eyes, and they're all sitting, and they've got napkins spread out over their laps, and each one of them has a great big gaboon full of Mother's potato salad. They also have cabbage salad, another thing they go great for, and they keep sprinkling salt all over it and eating pig's knuckles. And up there on the stage, darling, I am growing older. And you can smell the potato salad and the pig's knuckles, and oh boy, and I have seen people in a hillbilly show. Now I saw this one time where they don't call it hillbilly; it's just called Midwestern. You know, it's called folk. And I've seen people sit in a row watching one of these shows. A family of about 19. They will arrive in a panel truck. They will arrive in a farm truck, and they've written for tickets 2.5 years before. Do you know some people wait 2.5 years to get into these things? And now their big day arrives, and they'll talk about all their lives. And so they will wait 2.5 years, and finally the day comes, and they get the old Ford panel truck or the Ford stakeout truck or that 1.5-ton farm truck is all polished and shined, and they all get in the back of this thing. They have blankets spread out. And, they ride all the way into the city, and they finally arrive. There's about 18 of them, the whole bunch. There's an old guy all twisted up with gout. You know, he arrived. Hey, bye, George. I've been waiting here for 2.5. I've been listening to you boys since I was a boy. Bye, George. He comes in, and with him is old Mama Yoakum. And she is going along. Come on now, Paul, let's go. And they all come creaking, the kids and the whole thing, the pigs, dogs, the whole thing trails after them. And I've seen them sit in a row. The whole crowd sit. I actually saw this scene. They sit down instantly. They sit, and the mother, great big fat mother, you know, she gives birth on the hour, every hour. She's been doing this for about the last 25 years now, and they're stretched out behind her like a cloud of gnats. And she doesn't even know how many there are, who they are, what their names are, and once in a while a stowaway shows up. Some kids have grown up in the wrong family. They just didn't know, you know. They just, one day they just forget to go home, and they just stay there, and that's it. They grow up. They wonder how come this redhead kid showed up there one day. And then there's a lot of shooting sometimes as a result of it. But I've seen them all sitting in the row. Now, I don't know what I'm telling you all that's for, but I've seen them all sitting in a row. I actually saw this scene one night. They're all sitting in a row, and the mother sits down, and here they are spread out on either side, and they're all sitting in these folded-up chairs in the studio. And up there on the stage, Gene Autry is tuning up his guitar, or Merle Travis is getting ready to sing. Let's see, his big song always. They all sing the same song all the time. One of these guys will hit a song that people love him to sing, and he will sing this song forever and ever and ever. They go ape every time they sing it. How many of you can tell me what Gene Autry's big song was when he was a hillbilly singer? And everybody, well, I can tell you what it was. It's that silver-haired daddy of mine. Oh, my daddy, I love you. That was his. And then there was another guy. There was another guy who used to sing this one. Gee, what was that one about the Golden Street? When I get to the Golden Street, they'll wear golden slippers. You know that one? Oh, they love that kind. Yeah. How does it go? Used to hear that one all the time. And of course, one of the most common ones that they used to sing constantly, every day, they would always in every one of those shows, the announcer would say, or the MC, he'd be always known as Little Jimmy Whoopee or a big slim nothing or something like that. And he'd say, well, folks, it's time now, that time that we all been waiting for, that time that a lot of you folks write in, you've been asking for us all the time. And by the way, we've got a new album out. Got a new album out on Lout Records. You just asked for it. It's L-O-U-T, Lout Records. We got this new record out that we have done of all your favorite hymns. And now to sing your favorite hymn, here he is. Little Freddie Slobbins is going to sing your favorite hymn. This is one you've all been waiting and asking for, The Old Rugged Cross. Me old rugged cross, yeah, Well, I'll tell you, that was a... You hear this on... I'll tell you where you hear this. You hear this a little bit of it on the Don McNeil show, which is still on. They repeat the same thing over and over and over. That's what they want. Well, now, don't laugh. The Borscht Circuit fans like the same thing. Have you ever seen a slight variation in a Jackie Gleason show? Jackie Gleason shows are as set as a classical ballet. He does everything every week exactly like he did the week before. And you can just sit there and predict it. And the audience does, and that's what makes them love it. If just once Jackie took that cup, and took a sip out of it, and he went, tea, and laid it down, they'd all feel cheated. Instead, he goes, woo. And they love it every week. Every week he does the same thing. The three chicks come out, they put the chair down, and he looks at him, he says, woo. And then, whoa. He sits down. It's all as classical. It just fits a set pattern and does not deviate. Well, so do the hillbilly shows, and for the same reason. They're aimed at the same kind of audience. One happens to be an urban hillbilly who sits there every day and splits his gut every time Jackie takes a sip out of that thing. And the rural audience is very much the same. They like the same joke. Every week, little Jimmy Pickens says the same thing to Minnie Pearl. And every week they love it. He'll say something like, Minnie, have you heard from your cousin Clem Cadiddle-Hopper yet? How's his knee? And the crowd flips. And Minnie Pearl says, none of your business. I'll tell you, none of your business. Clem Cadiddle-Hopper wrote to me last week. And they go on and on with the same scene. Well, I'm sitting there watching this one night, and I saw this family arrive. There must have been 27 of them. And there were, trailers, and there were dogs and chickens and everything, and a lot of stuff that just sort of trailed in after them. And they all sat down, and up on the stage, the boys are getting ready to work. And Mama then, and she has a basket. Bob, she had a basket that was I'd say about 4 feet across and about 3.5 feet deep, and 4 guys carried it in for her. Clem, Howie, Big Luke, and Mudley. All carried it in there, and they hold this thing down, and then she takes back, it's covered with a tablecloth, and she brought out, now here's the scene, she brought out a full rack of spare ribs. Now, I mean spare ribs. They were about 3 feet long. I don't mean the kinds you go and you get at the Chinese restaurant. These are spare ribs. These are Kentucky spare ribs. That means they're ribs, they're great big ribs, and they're about that big. It's a whole rack of ribs. And they're barbecued. And so she starts tearing them off and passing them down the aisle. And they're just ripping the spare ribs up and down the aisle. And instantly in this place, you could smell the whole thing. You could smell the pork fat, the hog grease, and the chitlins. You could smell the chickens laying the eggs. You could have the whole thing. And then after she passes these spare ribs down the aisle, she starts passing hard-boiled eggs. They must have had 35 hard-boiled eggs apiece. And then she gets out all what they're going to drink. You see, she passes out buttermilk. And they have it in ball jars. And this went on all through the show. They did not stop once. And all the while up there, Minnie Pearl is singing and hollering, and Big Clem is yelling, and Hank Jones is up there whipping them off, and Merle Travis is like, cigarettes and whiskey and wild, wild women will be the death of me, yeah. Cigarettes and whiskey and wild, wild women will be the death of me, yeah. And they all sit and cackle. He sings the same song every week. And they're sitting there eating through the whole scene, all the way on down, until finally she reaches down on the bottom of this thing. And you figure they're about done, She reaches down and she pulls out a chicken that must have weighed 27 pounds. It was the biggest chicken I ever saw. And she starts cutting off chunks of it. They're eating the chicken. Somebody gets the drumstick and somebody gets the wishbone, and they're talking about it all the time. And way down at the other end, you could see old Grandpa. Every time he's gumming everything. See, he has not had teeth since he lost them at the Battle of Manassas, the second battle. He lost his teeth, and he's down there just gumming all that chicken, gumming all those pork chops, the spare ribs. And once in a while, Big Luke, there's always one guy who is a bachelor in a family like that. He's been in the family now for 45 years, and he's not about to get married because somebody's got to clean out the pig pen and the hog lot for Mom. And I once had a little affair. I'll never forget one time that girl down down at the consolidated school where we just took to batting our eyebrows back and forth to each other. I never saw her after that. She moved away to Hyattsville, you know. And I just never saw her. Of course, I ain't had the time. Of course, with the plow and the reap and all that stuff, I just don't have time. Got to keep that old International Harvester tractor. That thing has been giving me fits. And I just have to keep winding up that thing every day. I just don't have time to go and have fun. Really, I play a little pool once in a while Saturday night and drink with the boys. And he's this kind, Luke. And you can hear Luke down there once in a while. Luke would go, brah. He just let it go. And it's just life is like that. And all the while they're singing and playing and hooping it up there. And that is a section of life that you don't hear much reported on, really. And I get that feeling when I watch the classical show. By classical, I mean a show that is so predictable that it's almost painful. And I have a feeling that almost all of us, in one way or another, we honor predictability. That predictability is a very important part. Order. In short, most of us live lives that are not ordered. Even Luke down there on the hog lot, his life is not ordered because every 20 minutes the barn gets hit by lightning. You know, right after he paints it, the hurricane comes and blows it into the next county, blows it all the way to Posey County, and his barn is gone. And so his life, believe me, his life is no more ordered, even though guys who live in the city somehow think people in the country, you know, they've got this nice, oh boy. I'll tell you, if it isn't the locusts, it's the corn borers. If it isn't the mechanic worms, it's the tomato worms. If it isn't the tomato worms, it's the cabbage bugs. And if it isn't the cabbage bugs, it's Ma throwing a fit again. And it goes on and on and on. Then, of course, you know the minister ran away with that little girl, Parsini. He ran away with Agatha Parsini from down around Rabbit Hash again. You know, and it's awful now. Now we got all kinds of trouble down at the church. The ladies just say they're just not going to have a strawberry social this year because of all the talk. And life does not go smoothly. So where he does get it smoothly is when he goes down to see something like the Grand Ole Opry, and it is totally unchanging. The same jokes, the same guys, the same hats, and, you know, the same scene. Oh, very much. Now, how does that affect the ordinary guy who's not, not rural? Well, the urban variety of that is, let's say, the Tonight Show, which is predictable. I'll tell you the same scene, you know. The Zsa Gabor says the same things to John. Everybody loves it. Skitch gets up and does the same thing. Have you noticed that in the Jackie Gleason show, you can practically time it? He says, "Oh, Sam, you are looking beautiful tonight. Oh, you are looking just like a tomato worm with the hives tonight. Oh," and then they show him and he nods. Sammy Spear, our orchestra leader. You know, funny thing, and he sits down, does his monologue. This is all classical. I'm not putting it down, but everyone wants this. Have you ever watched the dancing on that show? That ain't dancing. Yeah, they do all the things and the more they do what you've seen before, the more the crowd goes ape. And so 45 girls come running out with the high silk hat, with the little silk tails and the canes, and they go ta 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 ta, and then they all kick in unison. Everybody says, "Oh, look at that! They're in step." Then they do the overhead shot when they make the roses and the rosettes. I said, "Look at that! Isn't that fantastic?" So everybody has his predictability factor. It's what they call the ritual element in our life. And you may get it from church, you may get it from the Grand Ole Opry, or you may get it from the Jackie Gleason show, the Tonight Show. You may get it from the WLS Barn Dance. Coming your way.